I'll
Yeah, that
call.
would be.
I have the roll here.
Thank you.
So I'm going to call the roll, the call to order and call the roll. Adele Slaughter here. Lily Barasha. I think she's on her way. We'll look for her later. Okay, Chip?
Yep.
Alexander Black, I think he's on his way. Chris Trent.
Yes, I'm here.
Susan Schauble.
Here.
Jesse Sanford, are you here yet? I know he's going to be a little late. He told me. Chip Meehan.
Here.
Melanie Winter.
Here.
Diana Nicole.
Here. Sorry, I'm joining without live. I'm just very sick, so I don't want to be on YouTube in this condition.
No problem. Tony Knight.
Here.
Yeah.
And Scott Mandel, ex officio board member.
Member of the year. It is top secret.
Oh,
until
who? Who?
announce
I
it.
was gonna ask you who.
Jonathan Zimmerman.
Oh, good. I was thinking Lenore, but Jonathan's just as good. Yep.
Patty.
Okay. Okay. Be sure to mute when you come on so that we don't hear your conversation. I think I just, okay. All right. So we've taken the roll. Now, did everyone have a chance? I got the minutes late and I sent them out late. I can put them up there. They take 2 seconds to read if you didn't get a chance to read them. But did you get a chance, everyone? Chip, Tony? Tony did. I did. Did you get a chance, Chip?
I did.
Chris, did you get a chance?
Yes.
And Susan? Did you get a chance?
Yes.
And Diana? Yes. Okay, so we can vote on the minutes. Do we accept them? All in favor? Anyone opposed? No one's opposed. Then they pass in the consent agenda. I'm sorry, I just lost my agenda, so I have to go to find it. Okay. There it is. Are there any announcements by government representatives or any guests who would like to speak at this time? No, seeing no hands raised, I'm going to move on to the next. Public comments within the committee's jurisdiction on items not on the agenda. Oh, wait, Brandon, you had your hand up.
I'm the public today, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Just letting you guys know, wasn't on the agenda today, but the alternative 1.5 California focused conservation alternative for the LA Zoo, they're having a public meeting at 6 p.m. August 15th to provide comments on the zoo's vision, plan, project, alternative 1.5. That's a bureaucratic mouthful. It's on our social media pages, the SCNC social media pages, as well as on our SCNC website. There's a link there. You can click on it and get all the information you want. I believe the public review period for this focused recirculated EIR, they call it, it's from between July 14th and August 29th. So after this virtual public meeting, there'll be 2 more weeks for public review of this EIR. So I encourage everyone to attend it. Again, the Zoom information is on the link on the Studio City Neighborhood Council website and our social media. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And does anybody know who is backing or who is promoting this 1.5 zoo plan? Does anybody know anything about it? So we have to go look and do our own. Yeah, Charles, go ahead.
I know I'm not on the committee, but we discussed it quite a bit at the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance, and it's obviously the proposal that the zoo people are supporting at this point, and there's support for it from several of the other neighborhood councils, and there has not been, NCSA decided not to pass a motion on it at this point because there wasn't consensus on it, but there is, we broke through a lot of the EIR on it, and like, I might be able to answer a few questions. Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know if that helps.
I'm sorry, I
May I
missed
ask a
some of what
question?
you were saying. Yeah, go ahead, Chip.
So Charles, it seems that this sort of went in the direction that you would encourage it to go. It seems that any movement of the plantings, for example, to all native seems to have happened. And it seems that all the non-natives have been removed and replaced by a native design. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of execution in it to actually ensure that that's done the way it is, but I think the goals are right at this point. And it's certainly better than I think the original draft, and there's a more focus on California regionalism with it. So stuff that appealed to a lot of us.
It's an interesting precedent there for some of the stuff we're looking at. So for example, the ad hoc committee for the Harvard Westlake proposal, where that's one of the concerns is there enough native foliage there? So it's a nice precedent for that conversation.
Yeah.
Diana, did you have a comment? Diana?
Yeah, on top of everything else, my cursor isn't working, so bear with me, sorry, use my fingers. So LA Audubon put in a comment in support of the folks like the Friends of Griffith Park on the zoo. The big issue that we have is the destruction of the woodland. I'm seeing Scott.
What's the matter, Scott?
You guys should move on to another topic. This isn't on the agenda, and we really can't be having a back and forth on this. It was brought up in public comment, but the committee should not be going back and forth on a non-agenda item. So
we'll agendize it at another day.
yeah, you can say, we'll discuss this, and if anyone else from the public has non-agenda public comment on this zoo item, sure, go ahead. But no back and forth from the committee. Just agendize it for the next meeting.
Got it.
Or have a special meeting for it. It's a big enough topic. Thanks.
So
Yeah.
just point of a question, Scott, Adele, if the agenda is included an item on there, reoccurring item that said new business. I forget the wording for it, but a lot of folks do it, business that didn't make it on the agenda type of statement, would that solve this problem in the future?
No. If you want to just include a reoccurring, all of the major items that are occurring in the city that are sustainability, and just say updates on these and just list the 6 or 7 items. So in case you do want to talk about it, but you can't just say, we'll talk about something that's not on the agenda item.
We can look at it and call a special meeting. So, yeah.
Sure, I'd recommend that. It's a big enough topic.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
get a guest or two to speak on it. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Diana. Any other comments from the public on non-agenda items not on the agenda? No? And I would like to make a note for the record, Chip, that Jesse Sanford is now in attendance at the meeting. Doreen Sanchez has raised her hand. Go ahead, Doreen.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering where I could go to find some of the details regarding the zoo project, please.
Brandon, it's on, there is a spot on the SCNC website that describes it. And if you send me your email, I can get you the information.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Do you
Information
have
very
a way
quickly,
to?
Adele. Point of information. You just go to studiocitymc.org and look at the homepage topics. It's quite literally, we're not discussing it. It's just a point of information here. It's quite literally the first news item on our homepage. So just go over there and the link is right there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doreen. Thanks, Brandon. Okay, so now we're on, if there's no other comments, we're on to discussion and possible motion to send the following letter in support of planting native trees in Studio City to Rachel Malrich, David Miranda, Hector Banuelos, is that how you say it? And Stephen Dupree at the Urban Forestry Division, and council members Concorian and Rahman, and Vincent P. Bertoni, Director of Planning. And this is the motion, which I will read. The Los Angeles region faces a biodiversity crisis. Over 90% of local butterflies, songbirds, and other pollinators have disappeared in the last century due to the replacement of local flora with non-native plant and tree species. Native landscape plants and trees can thrive in our urban environment and furnish all the benefits of non-native trees can offer in terms of canopy shade to offset the heat island effect, beauty, and shade for humans, while providing the only path to sustainability for biodiversity, water, and energy savings, and elimination of soil amendment runoff pollution. Therefore, the Studio City Neighborhood Council appeals to the City of Los Angeles, all applicable government agencies, public, private partnerships, and private parties planning in public space to discontinue the practice of planting non-native landscape being plants and trees, except in situation where plants and trees are designed to produce food for human consumption or provide a designated recreational playing field, and henceforth these same parties otherwise only plant 100% California native landscape plants and trees within the City of Los Angeles, and specifically within the stakeholder boundaries of the Studio City Neighborhood Council. Okay, I open the floor to discussion of this motion, and let's do first public comment on that, and then we'll go to committees people. And I have Charles Miller here as the perhaps the writer of this motion to answer any questions or fill in the gaps. So Brandon, would you like to speak?
Sure, why not? My question, and Charles is here, thank you for being here, and a few other people here are know more about this, far more about this than I do. The city, their contract system, the way they have contracts with organizations and corporations, long-standing contracts. Would these contracts, would these agreements fly in the face of this possible motion, where we're asking them to plant native plants, but they're contractually obligated to certain organizations to use them as suppliers of said plants, many of whom aren't native? Would that be a major hurdle to cross?
That's a good question, Brandon. And, the only hurdle there, quite frankly, is laziness. Because what tends to happen with most of the city agencies is they go to the nursery of the one place they have a contract, and they just pick up whatever happens to be there that day. However, it is completely legal and within the contract boundaries of everything that's already established to do contract grows or to request the nursery to stock, native plants, and they don't do that. And so there are many, many nurseries out there that exclude that carry natives, and some exclusively natives. So they could certainly add more vendors to their list, but alternately, they could continue to work with the people they work with now and just tell them to grow natives. And they can do that in two fashions. They can just request that natives be there and say that's what they want to buy, and then that's an incentive to do it. And then they can do something called contract growing, which is where they say, okay, we've got this project, and in 3 years, once we do all the major construction, it's going to be ready for plants. So here's the exact pallet we want. So we're committed to buying all those plants if you get them grown in time. And then the nursery has basically no risk because they have a contract to have all those plants. So there's a lot of remedies for that.
Does that answer your question, Brandon?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Doreen or Randy or Scott, any other comments? Seeing none, I'm going to go to Tony Knight.
Thank you, no.
Thanks. I really enjoyed the presentation from Charles last week and last time, and I thought it was really great. And I'm very, very supportive of the entire concept. I thought that the motion, in terms of the way that it's written, was a little bit pedantic. And I like something a little softer personally in recommending these kinds of things, having had a lot of experience in many years of writing motions and passing things at a school board level. So, for example, where it says, discontinuing the use, discontinue the practice on that, where it says after the therefore there. I like something like consider the discontinuation of the practice of planting non-native landscaping plants. And then where it gets down to the bottom, where it says, otherwise only plant 100% California native plants. But I like something better that I think it's better that plant predominantly California native landscaping plants. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Having done a project with the tree people this spring, and as a volunteer coordinator, I'm new at this still, so I don't claim to know everything that others here know. But one of the things that we looked at in our training was, like, when we're doing a street or an area, what are the trees that are currently there and what will look the best in the neighborhood? And so, for example, in our street here in Studio City, we had predominantly Brisbane box trees. So we went with those as the tree that we planted. And we've been real successful with that. My wife and I have been watering them very infrequently, about once a week, even in this heat. They're taking off, they're growing really well, and they look really nice with the other ones that are planted there, so that the street has a beautiful look to it. Now, not that couldn't have looked as nice with sycamore trees or something, but I think sometimes there's a situation where where it's always and only are not always the best solution. But to urge organizations like the Tree People, which I hope we would consider to be a friendly organization to our council and to others, rather than demanding that they do a certain thing different than they've been doing, to understand some of their points of view. They're looking at planting hundreds or even thousands of trees that may not even be available if they had to be 100% California native plants. And that using other trees may be acceptable in many different applications. So having done this in the school district, we planted mostly native sycamore trees, but we used a few other ones as well for variety, so that it didn't look like a forest of only one or two kinds of trees. So I don't know, I just thought that softening the motion would be a good idea rather than demanding that. I think, we know that, yes, 150 years ago, we didn't have non-native plants here. But as they say, the genie is out of the bottle these days. And Los Angeles has a lot of, mostly non-native plants that are in our landscapes. And it's not really realistic to think that we're going to go 100% native from now on. And, so I think, being reasonable with this is the objective, and educating people about it is good. It certainly doesn't work when you only have 2 native plant nurseries in the area. To even go and buy your own is very difficult. But encouraging the big nurseries like Boating Treeland, et cetera, which does sell native plants, native trees, to have more of them available, and to talk to people about why they may want to choose an ironwood tree or something like that instead, or an oak or whatever as a choice. I like that approach better to things related to this kind of an issue, rather than telling people what they should do in such a strong fashion.
So can I recap? You're asking for a friendly amendment of consider to discontinue the practice, blah, blah, blah. And what did you say? At least 80% California native?
I just said
What are you saying?
predominantly, rather than putting a number where people have to go out and count. This is part of our problem in Los Angeles. We have too many things like 100%, 80%. It should just say, these same parties otherwise plant predominantly California native landscaping plants and trees. That would be amazing if that could happen. And it's more likely that people would read that and say, oh, this is kind of neat. I like this idea, including the organizations that are our friends.
Adele, is it possible for me to address some of that, or what would you prefer?
Yes, please. Absolutely.
Okay. Tony, I certainly appreciate a lot of the things you're saying. However, I can tell you that the first reason that we have this language is that this is a language that has already been approved exactly as is by Palms NC, Silver Lake NC, Venice NC, Highland Park, Elysian Park, Riverside, and it's being considered by like 10 others. And so part of the idea here is to have all the neighborhood councils adopt similar language so that there's more impact to that. Second of all, with respect to what the city does, certainly Rachel Mallory will be very happy to plant more Brisbane box. I think that's one of her favorite trees. But what we need to do, what we feel we need to do, is to make the city the example so that the nurseries do stock these things. And if we get into the superlatives or adjectives or game, then it's my experience in doing this for 20 years in different projects is that the people who don't want to plant natives will always exploit that to the maximum of not complying with conforming to any kind of agenda to plant natives. We can easily provide 100% natives for things. The idea of needing to continue to stick to an aesthetic of monoculture on streets is something we really as sustainability advocates need to move away from. Whether the trees are non-native or native, that makes them much more susceptible to disease and to pests. When we have one entire street of just one entire look, that's an aesthetic we as advocates need to move away from. So we have, it's not just Western sycamore, we have 30, 40 trees easily on the approved street tree list that we work to get the city to approve. They just don't plant them. And so there are many, many native options, and there are many sources for them. And if the city says we're going to plant native, that makes the nursery start to grow natives. And that's really the mechanism that we need to cause a market force incentive, essentially, to bring natives into the fold. And it is realistic to plant only natives. It is not something that a lot of people want to do. And I have a lot of friends that tree people, and there are some people who are in the same camp as me. There are some who are not yet, but that's kind of where we are as advocates. We're not always at the same place, but I do feel like the science and the data and the biodiversity movement really require us to make a radical shift in the way we do this. If we only plant native trees going forward, in 50 years, we'll still have way less than half native trees. So we're not talking about ripping out stuff that's already there. We're talking about doing the right thing when we're replacing stuff and planting new stuff.
Thanks, Charles. Diana Nicole?
Hey, thanks, Adele. So I absolutely understand where Tony's coming from, but we only have a 3% native tree canopy in the city's streets, and so I think we really need to send a strong message on this. I know I've been planting trees in this city for a long time now, and there have been people asking for natives even before the biodiversity report came out. And what we're seeing in the field is actually the opposite. Instead of embracing natives, they're embracing non-native trees. And I think it's also important that we be consistent with the other neighborhood councils in sending this strong message. But I do have a question. What about the historic neighborhoods that have specific, as part of an HOA or something like that? Charles, are you able to answer that question? Has that come up?
Yeah, it has one of the things. And the important thing here, Diana, is that this is not a CIS. This is not a policy. This is not a council motion.
Right.
Basically asking all government agencies, be they city, county, or anywhere. And we also have people in Burbank and in Pasadena and in Fullerton who are all working on similar efforts to get local governments to adopt this language. This is about saying, as stakeholders, this is the language that we want. The municipality is going to adopt their own specifics, and that becomes a thing for public hearings and all the minutiae and details of things like historic neighborhoods. That's all worked out then. And certainly they might provide provisions to do what Tony wants to do, which is have flexibility in terms of matching existing trees or something along those lines. That's all in the cards. Basically, this is just getting all the stakeholder groups together to say, this is really what we need. This is really what we want. And you as our government agents need to change your policies to embrace this in a workable fashion. And so I think that, we tried to avoid even to use, I think it was Brandon's word, that it was pedantic. I don't know, maybe it's Tony. We tried to avoid getting too heavily into the weeds and still provide the necessary, words to actually say what we wanted to say. It was a real balancing act. And I know that the motion itself is not the most gracefully worded thing on the planet, but the idea was to try to cover as much as people felt we need to cover that can make people happy without going too much into detail.
Yeah, I want to say that's a great point, Charles, and I really do support the motion as is. And I brought up that question because my point is that first of all, it's good to tell the city what you want, right? And be very direct and strong about that. But secondly, I think we will get non-native trees planted because of some of the areas that have rules around that anyway. That's kind of a given. So anyway, that was my point with that. I appreciate the motion. Thanks again.
Right, and this wouldn't interfere. To give you an example, like the Barnsdale Park initiative, where they just put all the olive trees in there to be in conformance with historic guidelines. Stuff like that's still going to happen, and people can have their own opinions on that kind of thing, but that's direct municipal action. And so this is really just about an opinion from stakeholder groups saying this is a real crisis and we need to change our policies to really embrace biodiversity.
Great. Brandon Marina.
Thank you. I appreciate Charles Miller accusing me of using the word pedantic. I'm not that sophisticated I aspire to be, as probably Tony. Climate change, the major legislation that was just passed in the Senate, part of which was climate, water usage, drought. That's not mentioned here. I would assume, and I don't know this, you're the expert, not me, that native plants use less water and are more environmentally friendly than non-native plants not from this area. So if that's the case, should that also be highlighted in this motion, that there's less water usage, considering what we are in store for, according to the experts, over the next several years?
$64,000 question there, Brandon. And it is in the longer version of this that takes up 2 pages, but it was, just very clearly, I think I mentioned this in the presentation to you guys, our native plants and trees on average use 6 times, 600% less water than the non-native trees that are traditionally used in landscaping. And even when you're talking about bringing in like severe drought tested trees from deserts in Mexico and Australia and China, which are very much in vogue right now, those don't do anything for biodiversity. They just, and on top of that, even with the most severe climate change predictions for modeling for Los Angeles for the next century, we still are going to have times when we have very, very heavy rains. They may just happen a lot less. And those desert trees that we bring in from other places, which use the absolute least amount of water, they will struggle to survive when those occasional rainstorms do happen, as opposed to our natives, which are adapted to that kind of huge fluctuation in precipitation, which is built into their DNA. So there's a lot of detail we could have put in this. And that's why I go around and do the presentations and talk about the overall reasons for all of this. But it was a judgment call in terms of trying to make everybody happy. Some people wanted it a lot shorter than this, to just say, do this, but that's where we ended up.
Tony?
Since it's not, I don't think this is a city council resolution or anything that's got the force of law. So It's a recommendation. So, and I guess I don't really care what other groups have voted on. This is our group, and we get to decide what the motion is going to be. And so, I would just say, I like a style that's different. Maybe that's what I'll bring to this over time, because I'm still relatively new. When you need to fight, you need to fight. And when you need to work with people and convince people, then you need to take a different approach that's not so stern, I think, even though it's for the right reasons. And I think that in Los Angeles, when we're looking at planting trees, it's more important that we plant trees, first of all, rather than arguing about which kinds we need to plant. When you look around the city, especially in the more disadvantaged areas of this city. And I would still favor, less of a strong statement in this motion, personally.
Thank you. Melanie?
I would, if we want to do what I have come to do as a habit a lot, which is often say climate and biodiversity crises at the same time. So in the motion, when we say biodiversity crises, we can say climate and biodiversity. And I think that's helpful to continually mention those two things together because they are inseparable. And then I'll just note to Tony, I appreciate what you're saying, and that is, that's sort of how things are done. And if you haven't been in the weeds in this fight for decades, then if we were just beginning to have this conversation, that's the way to go. But be aware that that's the approach that's been taken for decades. And yet here we are. So it's time to be a little more precise in our language and a little more precise in our ask. I've worked with tree people for more than 30 years. And I can tell you, we've been having this conversation about planting natives with them for 30 years, even in the wildlife area in Sepulveda Basin. So yes, plant trees. There are always going to be non-native trees planted for a variety of reasons, but we need to be clear in prioritizing. We need to have motions, and the city and county government both can take actions that can incentivize propagation, contract growing of the kind of plants we actually want rather than just hit and miss. We need to get very clear about why it's important to do this. We're way past the let's be super polite and ask and suggest something, because we've been doing that for a really long time. And I think that the global circumstance calls for more precision right now. At the end of the day, it's gonna be subject to a lot of conversation. And if we can carry the ball further down towards the goal line by being more precise, then that's the goal of being this way this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Melanie. Susan?
I just want to echo that I think it's good the way it is, because we are in a crisis, and yes, we will always be planting some non-natives, but I think it's imperative that we, make a change here, and the only way we can do it is by being strong. Just wanted to throw in my 2 cents on that.
Any other discussion on this? I'm just lowering your guys' hand. No other discussion. So I have 2 friendly amendments, which we need to vote on. So number 1 is to soften the language and say, oh gosh, shoot, I had it. And can you just say what those things you wanted to add or change were?
Well, I'm not sure there's enough support based upon the discussion, so I think you should.
Well, we have to take a vote on it because unless you want to withdraw the friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment's actually not by Robert's rules up for debate. That's if the chair accepts it, because because you're just clarifying something. An actual amendment needs a second, and then it goes into formal discussion, and then there's a vote.
Thank you. So I'm okay to not do that friendly amendment, although the friendly amendment that Melanie wanted to add was the Los Angeles region faces a climate and biodiversity. She wanted to add climate and biodiversity crisis. That's a friendly amendment. Do I have a, does anyone want to make that?
I'll second that.
Okay. So Melanie first and second. Do we need a discussion on that?
Yes, you need a discussion on it. Any amendment is public and committee.
Well, I'm saying, does anyone want to discuss it? Not that, does anyone want to say anything about that? Any comments? Because I can call for a vote. All in favor of adding climate to climate and biodiversity, raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Chip? Yeah, yeah. Okay, all in favor, that's, well, let's see, what, it's 100, wait a minute. Jesse, did you vote?
Yes. Aye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and Alex, did you vote?
Yes.
So it's 100%, so it's
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, Chip, eight of us here are present. Is that 8? And Tony
And that's
too?
8 to add climate and biodiversity
Yeah,
crisis.
climate, yeah. So we're gonna add that to the motion. Now call for a vote on the motion. All in favor? Diane, let's do can you do a roll call so we're not confused? Chip?
Yes, I will do that. So Chip, yes. Adele,
Yes.
Alexander,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
Diana,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Doreen, are you on the board on the committee? I'm sorry.
No, she's not.
Okay.
Melanie,
Melanie
Yes.
Tony,
and
Tony.
Tony Knight.
A week, no.
A week, no. So the motion passes with the friendly amendment unanimously.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Next, thank you so much, Charles, for coming. You don't have to stay.
Thank you
and
very
listen
much
to
for
us
your
go.
time. Please reach out to me if you need anything. If this goes to General Assembly, I'd be love to be there for that too, or any other committees.
Well,
I
we'll
really
send it
appreciate
to
the
the
work you guys are doing.
SCNC for next for whatever we can. We'll send it over to there. Okay,
Great. Thanks so
All right.
much. Have a good
Okay.
evening.
thank you. Discussion of planning commission appointees and conflicts of interest and possible motion to send letter of concern. Shit. So I need some help with this, Diana and Melanie.
What kind of help would you like?
I don't have anything on that. I'm not the one who put that on the agenda. So
Well, there are people who are appointed to certain things, they're appointed by city council, and then they serve on the neighborhood councils, and there is conflicts of interest around that, and we wanted to discuss that.
Well, Adele, can I just
Yeah.
give it this one specific example? So planning commissioners are unpaid positions. Currently, the president and the vice president of the planning commission, and it could be others, but this is the only two that I'm aware of, also are executives at real estate investment development firms. And this came up recently in the, or this information came up recently in the wildlife ordinance, where the president of our planning commission actually made a public comment in opposition to the wildlife ordinance. So that's the other conflict, already putting her decision in public comment, which tends to be the decision of most of the big real estate folks.
Adele, can I point of order this really quick?
Yeah,
What are we talking about? 6 or 7?
sorry. 6.
We're talking about 6.
You might have an early agenda because they got reversed.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think this is, I mean, this conflict of interest is something that runs through the city in a lot of ways, but I was just kind of wanting to discuss this, just to kind of put it out there that this is a thing that exists. I was actually quite shocked when I mentioned it to some other folks who said, oh yeah, that's how it is. It's a quid pro quo thing through the mayor's office. And I don't know if there's any action item on our part, other than it would be something of the nature. Well, I think for the wildlife ordinance that the president of the planning commission should at least recuse herself from that vote for starters. But I also think there's this bigger issue of this conflicts of interest issue and the ethics of how we choose who the mayor chooses to put on the planning commission. Given that we're going to have a new mayor in the not too distant future, maybe it's a good idea to have another letter that we communicate to the mayor's office that says, you know, that these are clear conflicts of interest in our mind, and they should be choosing folks like planning commissioners that don't have an ethical issue here. That's kind of what I was thinking. I don't know if you, Adele, have or anybody else has anything, but I don't have a motion to propose. I just kind of wanted to start this conversation in committee to see if there was any appetite for anything or if anybody had any ideas.
Well, we have Randy Freed. who'd
I'll
like to
say,
speak.
I would,
Wait,
the board
Melanie.
first or no? I
No,
mean,
we're gonna-
committee
we're gonna-
members first or no?
We're going to do the public first, which
No,
is
public first. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Randy, well, which is Randy Freed is the public.
Hi, hello, everyone. Just curious, I mean, I think it's always great to bring up issues of conflict of interest, and I probably would all agree that our city hall and downtown is a broken system of quid pro quo, and we see 2 members of the city council, one in jail, one's trial's about to begin, etc. So I think it's great to bring it up, but in bringing it back home to the NC system, I just wonder really how this is a sustainability issue for this committee. And I think that maybe this is something that should come out of government affairs, or even just having any board member, you know, bring a motion forward of sorts to send a letter, if that's what we think, a request for action to the board for the board to discuss. But this doesn't really feel like a sustainability issue, though an important issue to be sure that all stakeholders should be thinking about and discussing. Thanks.
Thank you, Randy. Melanie?
Yeah, I think if we're going to, what I was going to say is if we're going to have a conversation here, it should focus on how that is impacting sustainability, which I think we all understand. I and many of us here define differently than some. It is a broad term, so it when it comes to planning commission, that absolutely impacts how this committee defines sustainability. So it's within our purview to discuss how that impacts us. But if we were going to talk about maybe carrying a motion forward, then it would be good to be done through government affairs because it's legit government affairs. But I think if we wanted to bring the results of a discussion on how that does impact our ability to have a livable present, much less future, then that would be something we could have the discussion about in this committee and then bring that to that committee. If we want to bring some details of our concerns as it impacts, as it affects us and our purview over to government affairs, we could do that. That's what I was going to say.
I'm going to go to you in a minute, Diana, but I just wanted to say something about what, just say something. And that is that the sustainability issue here is if, how do I say this? If there are people in city government who are making decisions about tree removals, about developments that are not sustainable for our society, and they're doing it because of conflicts of interest where they have a vested interest in certain developments of those developments where they're not building affordable housing, but market rate housing, and that is not sustainable for our community. That is within our purview. And if they're doing it because they have, as we say, conflicts of interest, then, it behooves us to bring it out. And maybe we have to work with government affairs. I don't mind that. And I'm sure Barry would love to work with us on these issues. But I think we have every right to discuss these ideas because right now, Studio City is facing major developments that will impact our lives for the next 50 years. And who's going to talk about these issues? Who's going to unearth these conflicts of interest where people are pushing forward with huge complexes that will increase traffic and decrease the sustainability of Studio City. So I think that this is well within our purview to discuss.
I just want to say that I agree with you. I was just clarifying that let's focus on and making it clear that what we discuss here and what we decide to bring to Barry is focused and clear in that direction as well.
I heard you, Melanie. I know I'm sort of just reiterating what you said.
Right.
Yeah, no, I heard you 100%. Okay, so Diana Nicole, you had something to say?
I may just be saying to the choir here. I was going to say, I think it makes perfect sense that anything we would do, we'd want to get the support of the Government Relations Committee. I think that was a really good point. And just say again, and I gave a for instance of how this, I think, sits in this committee because that was the wildlife ordinance example.
Thank you, Diana. Brandon?
Yeah, there may or may not be a motion coming before the board on the 17th regarding a Board of Neighborhood Commissioners appointee who has nothing to do with the Neighborhood Council. It's a Garcetti appointee. He's a lame duck mayor. He's not going to be the next mayor. He's termed out. And I think that's a larger concern, that it appears he might not be going to India. So you question the appointments. Why is he appointing certain people to certain positions? And there's nothing we can really do about it. It's his right. He can do that. But when these appointments have absolutely nothing to do with the actual task at hand, in terms of this Board of Neighborhood Commissioners appointee, she has nothing to do with the Neighborhood Council system and never had. It doesn't make any sense. So that motion is going to be brought to the board, and I think this is a good idea. You can ask Scott if it could be a joint motion between you and the Government Affairs Committee, or actually even a SCNC motion independent of committee. That's not unheard of. So I think this is a good topic of discussion. I really do, because it does affect us for many years. Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie, go ahead.
Yeah, he may not be going to India, but he'll be gone soon enough, and it's not a bad idea to call to the attention of the next mayor some appointees that may need to be, rescinded, appointments that may need to change, concerns that community members have about certain appointments. I think so. Yeah, I think what I would request is, if there are, like, was brought here, Diana, for a specific person for specific reasons. So jotting that down, if there are others of concern to folks who are appointees who seem to have conflicts of interest or working antithetical to the body that they're appointed to, and we want to call those out, then we might want to be more specific than general as we bring this forward.
Thank you, Melanie. I don't think we're ready to do any kind of motion or letter at this point. So let's everyone keep this on their mind, and if you have more information or more ideas about appointees and conflicts of interest, please submit it to me and we can work up a more in-depth action. Diana, you have one more comment?
Yeah, just real quick, would it be a good idea maybe to put this on as a reoccurring agenda item for now?
Yes. Yes, I will do that. Absolutely. Good idea. Okay, so moving on to number 7, we're now discussion and possible motion regarding Concorian's pick for Cfac alternative for CD2. Diane is going to present, but I actually have, I think here. Oh, no, that's not it. There. I have a draft of a motion that Diana sent to me, which I would like to read and then we can discuss. Motion for board approval. The Studio City Neighborhood Council is deeply concerned with the declining condition of the city's urban forest and canopy. The City of Los Angeles Community Forest Advisory, Cfac, is an official bridge for communication about trees and urban forest. Cfac connects dedicated residents, Los Angeles elected officials, and many departments whose work affects the urban forest, such as public works, water and power, and recreation and parks. It is important that Council District 2 have a representative on Cfac who lives within the CD, I should be CD2, and who can thus best represent our special concerns. As such, the SCNC board authorizes its president, with the support from the SCNC Sustainability Committee, to communicate to our council member, Paul Concorian, its strong desire that he appoint CD2's alternate representative to Cfac as an individual who's not from Tree People or any entity that has business with the city, and who is a long-term resident of the city council district, and who additionally has demonstrable urban ecology expertise. Can I stop the share so we can discuss? So first, let's take public comment on the motion.
Do you have a second?
Oh, sorry, I need a second. Any second?
I'll second.
Okay. Public comment on that? Anybody from the public? Okay, so I'll give you an opportunity to speak later if you find a voice. Diana, go ahead.
Well, so I think the beginning of this motion talks about, for those that aren't familiar with Cfac, Cfac allows each council district to have 2 representatives to represent the community and the council district, I should say. And we currently have for CD2 a primary, and that person gets to vote for whatever Cfac decides the motions they want to vote on. And then we get an alternate. The alternate gets to vote when the primary is not there. And very often when primaries step down, alternates usually take that primary position if they want to. Currently, well, I just want to say this too. I've been involved with Cfac in one way or another for decades. In fact, our primary for CD2 learned about Cfac from me. But currently, the person that Concorian picked is somebody who is from Tree People, and historically Tree People has kind of stacked Cfac with their employees. So nothing against Tree People, just I think that represents a conflict of interest between the community and the city, and any of the tree planting partners like Tree People. They are a tree planting partner. They want that source of business or income that they have with the city to keep coming. So what I've seen is representatives from the planting organizations like Tree People, or the planting partners, I should say, with the city. They're going to have their own opinion about what's best for our community, and that might not be in our best interests. And keeping this topical, for instance, they don't plant natives so much. The community is advocating for native plants. Cfac is advocating for native plants. The biodiversity report is advocating for native plants, because we don't want people planting non-natives all over the city like we've been doing, that got us to this place where we only have a 3% tree canopy. The other thing is that we want somebody, I think, that lives in our community and has lived in our community for a while to represent us. In the past, Concorian's pick was Rachel Mallarich. She was with Tree People at the time. She lived in Long Beach. I know when I was on the Sustainability Committee, when Lisa Cahan was the chair, we invited her several times. And when we were meeting live, and because of her location, she declined routinely. Concorian's latest pick is moved here recently, relocated here from New York City. And I also think we really need somebody that has an education and experience, ideally in urban ecology, because if we look at what we're doing in the urban forest through the lens of an ecologist, even more than an arborist or a horticulturalist or an urban forester, which is what we're doing. And that's what gets us to things like climate ready trees. That would be ideal. We have a primary Cfac rep, Catherine Pacraduni in CD4, who has a much better background, spent a long time at Theodore Payne, also the Parks Foundation, is doing some great things. And so, the person that he's picked so far for alternate doesn't have any of that background. She actually has a planning background, really impressive degrees from impressive universities, but nothing in ecology, even in urban forestry, landscaping, or horticulture. So I think that it would be, I think we deserve better. And we definitely, riding this conflict train, I definitely think that this is a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Diana. Melanie?
I'm all for requesting that we have someone with a good background and experience. I don't know that we need to insist that they're a long-time resident of CD2. Our boundaries have recently changed. You can work in CD2 and not live in CD2 and understand CD2 well. You can have lived here for 3 years, and that's not a long-time resident. So I'm okay with the motion as long as we're not specifying an individual. And I would recommend against including long-time resident of CD2. But we do need someone with good background in urban ecology, and so yeah, at least we have one appointee. Not all districts even have an appointee at this point in time. I think it'd be great to see, love to see a male of color, honestly, because the Cfac is primarily women, and there's a lot of really smart, really good people on Cfac, but they're negotiating with and coordinating with and trying to educate and bring forward into this century a workforce that is not female. So I would love to see it diversify a bit, but I don't think we need to specify that. That's all.
Thanks, Melanie. I can't remember if Tony or Scott came next, but Scott.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the question, who are we talking about? That you're not supporting? Why can't we just say who it is? It seems so vague.
Oh, I was purposefully trying to stay away from a name, but I can certainly tell you who it is. I actually have her resume.
Oh,
There's,
Is there a council file for this, like the other alternates? And a letter from the mayor?
so there would be a letter from the mayor if it, that usually comes towards at the end of the process. So we're not there yet. So we're trying to head this off a little bit sooner than later. You still want to know the name?
Yeah, I kind of don't think this is gonna get anywhere if it goes to the board and we don't even know who it is we're talking about that you don't want to be on this commission. I mean, I don't know why we're just not saying the name.
Her name is Leah Serenian.
Can you spell that?
SOORENIAN is the last name.
Okay,
First name is LIA.
great. Thanks. That's my only question.
Okay, Tony?
Yeah, I'm not sure what all this hostility toward the tree people is again. And I know people try to mitigate that, but I'm sensing that just in this meeting. But that again, I really don't think you should pass a motion, or we should pass a motion that excludes someone who happens to be a part of or belongs to a particular organization. I mean, you can insert other organizations like the Sierra Club, or whatever in there and say that it's a conflict of interest. I cannot imagine how you could call the definition of a conflict of interest with a nonprofit organization that partners with the city as a conflict of interest. That to me is ridiculous. And that I can never support this motion. This one would be a very strong no. I like all of it about being from the area, et cetera. I think that makes good sense. But then saying, oh, but then they can't be a part of the tree people. To me, that's like a veiled or insidious way of saying, we don't want this particular person.
Thanks, Tony. Chip?
Yeah, I hear this is an interesting one. Following the earlier conversation about conflict, and I, with Tony, was uncomfortable about looking at just tree people, because I guess Tree People and Northeast Trees are the two organizations that really financially benefit from contracts to plant. So wouldn't it just be, as opposed to calling out Tree People or Northeast Trees, since there could be a third party that comes in, a third vendor down the road, would it be appropriate to say, we don't want the forestry person to be someone that is employed by a company that could get a city contract? And not have to say Tree People, but just say it shouldn't be someone that is gainfully employed by a vendor.
what works for partner, a city plants partner, we can say, if that's what you're looking for. You can't say could ever be, but you could say is a current city plants partner.
Yeah, I mean, I think that something like that works. But KYCC is another partner. So you're right, Chip. There is more than one planting partner. We mentioned Tree People because that's the one we have right now, and it is the go-to planting partner that Concorian tends to choose historically. But I'm fine with changing it to a city plants partner.
And Tony, would that make you feel more comfortable if it wasn't specific to the organization, but we're concerned that someone's going to influence decisions for whom their employer could profit?
I guess I still don't understand why these organizations are not corporations. They're nonprofit organizations that we donate to. I mean, they're doing work for the city, as a contract, et cetera.
Tony, they get business from the city and they get paid.
I know that. I know
One
that.
of the things
Yet-
that
yet-
does,
yet
Tony,
we go in
Tony,
and we-
one of the
and
things
we-
that does when you're getting paid by the city and you want to keep that contract going is you don't push the city to do things that you, even if you firmly believe and your mission says, this is our goal and objective, you're going to be very careful in pushing for that. If the city is stuck on a certain policy, you're not going to push because you want to keep your revenue stream. It's not just tree people. This happens in a lot of nonprofit spaces. So-
To Melanie's point, Tony, for the folks, for those of us who've been involved in this for a really long time, I don't want to get into that here, but I could talk to you offline and give you examples of what Melanie is talking about, the instances that really have happened over time.
It's not just on trees, it's in a lot of issues in the nonprofit sector. When you get a contract with the city or the county, suddenly you find yourself sitting on your hands. And this is going on in the water sector, for instance, right now, with a number of my partners. They're just they're out of their minds with not being able to push for things that they know we need because they have contracts with the county in this case. But that happens a lot. So if you want good expertise that is not going to feel in any way constrained by speaking to the science and recommending good policy, then that's why. That's the driver behind saying, we would prefer someone who wasn't a city plants partner. And I think that's valid. You want someone with the scientific expertise, who has local knowledge, who is not going to feel constrained because they have a remunerative contract. That's all.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Diane. Chip?
So just distilling this down, would the amendment be that we would prefer, so we would take out tree people, and I think it's a must, right? So we would take out the mandate, no tree people, and replace it with prefer a candidate who is not gainfully employed by a city plants partner, for whom there could be a conflict of interest.
I also like what Melanie just said, local knowledge. In the world of urban forestry, local knowledge is just really important.
So can I put this up on the, can you help me and we can rewrite it right now? Is that okay with y'all?
I have one last question. I want to make sure we are not writing a motion that is going to support an individual, because
I don't want to support an individual or not support an individual. That is not, we should not be doing that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm having, how do I do this? Sorry.
How imminent is this decision?
How imminent is the decision, Diana?
As far as I know, it's moving forward. This particular person has had interviews with the Cfac chair and and with our current primary Cfac representative. So it would be a good idea to get our position on this sooner than later, because then this has to go to the board at SCNC. So it's already going to be.
So help me out here. Can you see it, everybody?
Yeah, so if you go down to the bottom, right,
Yep.
it's strong desire that he appoint as CD2's alternative representative to CFAC, an individual who is not employed by a city plants partner or entity that has business with the city. Period.
Yeah, city plants partner.
Partner where there could be a potential conflict of interest.
And maybe get rid of that.
Could we put something like, put a picture, period after interest, and you want to put
Yes.
something like ideally?
Ideally, the candidate would have strong familiarity, would have demonstrated credentials and strong familiarity with the community.
What was the word that?
No, you were
Melanie-
gonna, that's up here, that's above here. It is important the council have
Right,
a representative who has local knowledge,
Local knowledge, I like that.
yeah, of
So you could end
CD2,
it after interest, period.
who
Mhm.
has local knowledge of CD2 and who can thus best represent our special concerns. Is that okay?
I would like to step in on this. If
Go
I-
ahead.
All right, you need the not, because now
I
it's,
think, hold on. You would have to approve, or the board would have to approve this motion. So the board, I would put the bottom part where it says, let me see, the SCNC board authorizes its president. I would put the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, approves the authorization of its president with support, and I'd put that at the very top, because you have to approve or oppose any motion. Right now, there's no approval or opposing of this motion. It's just is deeply concerned with the declining. The SCNC board authorizes. That's not what we do at the board meetings. We either approve or we oppose motions. So what I would do is I'd put that last paragraph at the top. And then I'd put that top paragraph at the bottom, because the top paragraph is basically a description of what this motion is about, why it exists in the first place. The bottom paragraph is actually the motion. And I know Scott has his hand up, so he might chime in on this as well. But I think that'll be a little more clearer to the board as to what this is all about. But it would be approving the SCNC to do something. Thank you.
and
you
just
wanna say-
make sure you say who is not employed by a city plants partner and capitalize the C and C in city plants.
Okay, hold on. Approves to
Sorry.
communicate to our councilman Paul
Adele,
Concorian.
Scott's hands up. I would call on Scott right away and he'll help you out, because he'll be.
Okay, Scott, go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. I just want to point out that I see two fatal flaws here. Number one, to me, this clearly targets someone and you're not saying who the someone is. And B, this proposed appointee has not yet made it to the council file. There is a letter, for instance, that just came out from the mayor just the other day regarding another appointee and for this same commission. And there's a council file, there's community impact statements. This is regarding Joanne D. Antonio, who is the primary representative for this post, who's replacing Eugene Chen. There's a council file, there's a letter, there's neighborhood council items she's named. I think you're either too soon on this or you're not saying who it is and why this person is specifically not qualified or you don't support. If it comes to the board vague like this, I feel its chances are slim to none. And that's my recommendation. Thank you.
So I have a question about that.
Yes.
Let's suppose that what we want to do is, how do I say this? I'm going with what Tony was saying. Like, I'm not necessarily against or someone just because they're from Tree People, although there's some thought that Tree People is trying to stack Cfac because they have, there's a bunch of whatever. But what if we were to make a more general suggestion to let's say Paul Concorian and maybe Nithya Raman, that they don't appoint people who have potential conflicts of interests. So whether it's tree people or whether it's whatever, whoever it is, whatever organization that also has contracts with the city to be a part of something like Cfac, where they have a, where it's a potential, vested interest, where they may not be making decisions that are the best for the community because they're the better, they have, divided loyalty. They have a loyalty to their organization, and they have, and sometimes those loyalties match up, but not always. And so what if our motion was just that, not about a specific person, forget about the appointee, or maybe that's late, and you're, like you say, Scott, that's for later down the road when that person's actually appointed and we can oppose that person or support. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, but I mean, you're going to tell the council members to keep the city code of ethics in mind when they appoint anyone to any position. And that seems like that's really not going to go anywhere either. I mean, the city says persons in the public service shall not engage, nor shall they have any interest, direct or indirect, in any business or transaction, nor incur obligation which is in substantial conflict with the proper discharge of their official duties in the public interest, or which impairs their independence of judgment in the discharge of such duties. So,
and yet they do.
Right, but that is the City of LA Code of Ethics. So if you want to say, hey, council members, read item 1 in the Code of Ethics before you appoint anyone to any position, I think.
So then really what we're
maybe
left to doing is looking at people that they do appoint and saying, hey, there's a possible conflict of interest here.
For instance, Brandon had mentioned that there's going to be a motion regarding a bonk commissioner coming before the board next week. The position is named, the nominee is named,
right?
Qualifications or lack thereof are specifically named, point by point by point, why we support or oppose this particular person for this particular position for these particular reasons. I think your concerns are valid. I just think you're getting ahead of the, I mean, watch for the council file to drop, and then I would just jump right on if that person is officially sent to the council, to the committee to be considered. I think that's when you jump in, and then there's specificity. That's just my suggestion. You can bring whatever you want.
Got it. Understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know who's next. Tony?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think that this motion is in our scope. I think that, again, when you make a sort of a statement, a blanket statement that, the person should be this, or they should be not part of,
it should be specific to the person.
I think I agree
whether
with
we
what you
support
said,
or
in other words,
oppose.
because just, I mean, this person might be from three people, and they may be the most qualified person in the room. I mean, versus other people that you're looking at. I just don't like making all these criteria for other people to decide, and then, without looking at the entire situation. And I still do not consider these things a true legal conflict of interest. I don't think that's a violation of the city's law or the code. I think you'd have a very hard time saying that if you appoint one of these, if the councilman appoints one of these people, that's a conflict of interest, which is a very loaded term. I don't consider that a conflict of interest.
Okay. Brandon?
Yeah, really quick. If there's a conflict of interest, they'll recuse themselves from the vote. But also, if you're Paul Concorian and you've been working with this person for a number of years at Tree People, and you trust them, you've grown trust for them, and they're qualified because you deal with them firsthand all the time, then that's a good reason for appointing this person. Yes, it might be Tree People, but if Concorian has been working with this person constantly and is impressed with the individual, then it's about recusing yourself from a vote where Tree People might be involved in the motion. So I would err on the side, I would think that the individual who is appointed would know that. Maybe not, but I think it's a matter of Concorian working with this person and trusting the person. And I don't know, again, I don't know the details about this. Nobody knows yet. Like Scott said, all the details aren't out just yet. When they do, maybe something will pop up that's a red flag. But for now, I think it's someone Concorian's worked with before who he trusts. Thank you.
So Adele, can I speak, please?
Yes,
Answer.
please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't very clear in the beginning. So first of all, this isn't a person that Concorian has worked with. This is a person that's new to the area from New York, and new at her job. Secondly, this person is a background in planning, which tends to be the antithesis of her opponent when it comes to the urban forest. There's a lot of planning, urban forest conflicts. And so if we're going to bring it back, and I definitely hear what Scott's saying, and I understand that, my concern for waiting on this is that it prevents us from potentially finding an alternate for that position that would be someone that would fit the bill better, and all the things that we mentioned, right? Somebody that has the background, the educational background, the experience, that's been here a bit and understands our community, things like that. So so that's the only thing that gives me pause and makes me feel a little queasy about waiting until there's a council file on this. I don't know what the right solution is for that. But I definitely wanted to be looking for and making recommendations, and maybe that's the solution, that if we find somebody, we pass a motion to recommend that person as the alternate instead of the person he's picked. I don't know, that's just popped into my head right now.
Melanie?
Yeah, the value of this to me is not to try to oppose somebody. And Diana is right. Leah has been here a little less than a year. She's an urban planner, and she's great, I think, as an urban planner. And she's worked in some pretty good spaces at Columbia and in New York. And she's a GIS person. And I'm sure she's been very helpful in doing some analysis of where urban tree canopy is needed. But what urban forestry needs is expertise in horticulture, biology, and urban ecology. To guide it to do what needs doing, not just where to put the wrong thing, right? I mean, since the Villaraigosa administration with the Million Trees Initiative, folks have been trying to say, planting 1 million trees, if you don't plant the right tree in the right place, you've done nothing. And that proved quite true. So now we've got the GIS telling us the places, but we still haven't really focused on what trees are going to do best and are going to serve us best in the climate and biodiversity crisis that we're facing. The city in general has a sad deficit in scientific expertise. A place like Cfac is someplace where you can put advisors that have the appropriate scientific expertise to coordinate with those departments that are implementing this stuff and advise them using that scientific expertise. And to me, the point of this motion is to say, we would like to urge the council member to choose someone with scientific expertise. I'm pretty sure that as a general rule, you either have to live or work in the district to be appointed in that district as a Cfac representative. I don't know if that's a hard and fast, but I know that in terms of convention, and that's what they've always done. So I'm not so focused on, where you are, because I think that's kind of a given. It's never hurts to say we want them to represent our interests and understand the community. But I think the most important thing to me is having the scientific expertise. And I think it's a value for this committee and for this community to push the council member to choose someone with biological science expertise in horticulture and urban ecology, because this is where the deficit is in the city, and this is where that's what we need the voices to represent. It's nice to have GIS experience in planning. We got a ton of those. And that's not going to help us solve the problem that we've been struggling to solve for 20 years now. So that's where I'm leaning on this motion. If this motion can represent the Sustainability Committee in urging the council member to choose someone with the appropriate biological expertise, then I think that's worth doing. And Scott, just so you know, Joanne D'Antonio was the alternate for a long time, and so she's just being moved up to the prime. Joanne's good, all for that. I don't know if this other person, apparently Gia hasn't been put forward formally, but I don't really care. I just want to make sure that we have our voice out there saying whoever it is that you choose has the scientific expertise. And if anybody on this committee knows someone who lives in CD2 that has that scientific expertise, then let's talk about that. But I think for the most part, that's what we need. That's all I got.
Thank you, Melanie. Randy?
Hi there, just really quick. I think that any board member that would listen to the meeting, if they go back to listen to sustainability, would hear that the motion is, if not specifically targeted at someone, which I think it really clearly is, but it's certainly the broader context, which I think Melanie actually spoke quite eloquently to just now, kind of inspired the greater context of why a motion like this is important. That maybe you just go for it now, because it sounds like the person you are all aware of, and certainly the board presumably doesn't know who she is from Adam, but I think you can spell it out now very succinctly and just lay out the reasons as Melanie has talked about, the scientific background, the experience with the local needs of our very, one only in the world, right, ecosystems that exist here. We need and want that local expertise. Sustainability, I think you just call it out and you use this, you name the first person, and and maybe that's coupled with some good old politicking by a letter from the president, or reaching out to Councilmember Concorian directly and inviting him into greater conversation to see if perhaps we can have a seat at the table, if you will, and engage in the conversation about who and what the better qualifications are for someone in this position, given the urgency of our environment. Thanks.
Thank you, Randy. I'm trying to. Melanie, were you or Diana, were you able to rewrite the motion at all?
I don't have a copy of it here. So
yeah, go ahead, Tony.
I was gonna say, I think what Melanie said makes sense. In other words, design a motion that instead of what the person's qualifications would exclude them, how about what the qualifications we would like to see? And so if you could maybe bullet those, has experience in the area, has experience, scientific experience in biodiversity and urban forestry, etc. I would be more supportive of a motion of what we would like to see in a candidate, rather than what we would not like to see. And I think that would be more appropriate for a motion like from our group.
So I'm working on this. The SCNC board approves a communication to Councilman Paul Concorian.
Chip has his hand up.
Go ahead, Chip.
I'm not sure how serious you're being about the time, but I could move that we, in the interim between now and the next meeting, write the motion that in a positive sense frames the qualifications that we would like to see in that position, and also use that description of the qualifications of the Cfac person as an entree to have a further conversation about the importance of the urban canopy. So use it as a door opener, in addition to saying that we would like to have the following criteria. So I would move that we take the next 3-4 weeks to write that motion up and then submit that on the agenda for the September meeting.
Do we, is that gonna go beyond the time limit, Diana?
I don't know. I'm okay with that. I would just want to have, just with one caveat. I've been involved with Cfac for over a decade, and I walked into something that was really dysfunctional and explained why we are in such a, our urban forest is in such an awful place. And that was the big problem that stood out to me and a lot of other folks, was that it was all tree planting partners. It's also a problem that those tree planting partners are made up at best by arborists. And the reason that we're doing a lot of things wrong with our urban forest planning and management and implementation is because we are doing this through the lens of an arborist or the lens of an urban forester. And other cities who are much better at this than we are, they have an ecological approach to urban forestry, and they have community involved in who picks their representatives for this type of committee. So it's certainly not unique to the city of LA. So I embrace everything Chip said there, but I would just say that we have to somehow include some mention again about the issue of having a Cfac that has representatives from the city's planting partners. So we may need to put a little bit of what we don't want in there, is what I'm saying, I guess.
Well, if we can table this motion. Oh, wait, Chris, you wanted to say something. Sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in really quick. So, and I guess this is mostly towards Tony, but just to support some of the things that have been said. After probably 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I spent a bunch of time going to the Sepulveda Basin Steering Committee meetings. And there were issues with planting partners all the way back then with not necessarily supporting native trees being planted in areas and stuff. So this is something that's gone on for quite some time, and particularly it was the head of the Native Plant Society who was having an issue specifically with the tree people. So it's not something new that's going on. So I think that's important to know. It's not just a couple people that know about it in the board here or whatever. It's been something that's been going on for a while and talked about. That's all.
Thank you, Chris. So can I have a motion to table it, and we'll work on it and represent
Motion to table
the
and
motion
motion to table
at,
and tweak.
Thank you,
Second, motion
Melanie.
to table
Do I
and
have a
tweak.
second? Thank you, Diana. You getting that, Chip? All in favor of tabling? You're muted, Chip.
Aye.
Yep.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? No one's opposed. Everyone's for it. Okay, awesomeness.
So what we do want, what we don't
Um,
want, it'll be in next month.
Yes, well, and if we find out that we need to have a special meeting because it's coming up sooner, we'll just call a special meeting. Sorry, I'm looking for my There it is. Agenda. I actually have no final chair reports at this moment. I'm sure I do, but I don't.
Chris, do you
they're
still have
not.
your hand up?
Chris? No.
No.
I don't think, no. I gave a suggested reading for future discussion about sustainability. We'll talk about that next meeting. Are there any other comments or anything someone wants to say? Brandon?
Just a reminder about the LA Zoo public hearing.
Just a reminder, the LA Zoo public hearing is on the 15th of August, which is like a few days from now. And Scott, would you like to say something?
Sure, thank you. Just a reminder that Zoom will generate a rough transcript of this about 45 minutes after the meeting ends. So for whoever's doing the minutes, I will send you the rough transcript, and it's a lot easier than scribbling notes throughout the whole meeting and trying to remember what was said and who seconded what. So there will be a transcript. I'll send it to Adele and she can share it with whoever she likes.
Yeah, it's
Chip-
me, and it's interesting notes that I've written down. I'm curious to see how much they jive against the transcript.
I'll copy it to you, Chip.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll just note that the Streets for All petition that was going around a while back was certified by the city council. They got enough signatures to put it on the ballot this fall. And yay, indeed, if any of you have been paying attention, just in the last 3 days, we've had 200-mile-an-hour car crashes resulting in deaths. And if you
Where were those?
All right, there was one on La Brea and Slauson, and then there was one in Mar Vista today. La Brea and Slauson, the woman was doing 100 miles an hour coming down La Brea and just plowed into folks who were sitting in the middle of the intersection waiting to cross La Brea going east-west on Slauson. So imagine yourself in the middle of Laurel Canyon and Ventura as you're creeping across the intersection with the green light, and suddenly someone comes racing down Ventura past, zigzagging through the cars at 100 miles an hour and just slams right into you. That's what happened at La Brea and Slauson. 5 people died. And then
There
today,
is graphic video of that too.
there's very graphic video of it. It's terrifying. And then today, Anne Heche was going 100 miles an hour down a residential street in Mar Vista and crashed into a woman's home. And the woman was fortunately in a part of the house that she didn't get killed. Her house burned down. She lost everything. And Anne Heche is probably going to die. She's in critical condition in the hospital. So this is what it's like on our streets. And, I, like many of you, hear them racing down our street every night. And it's scary out there. So the Streets for All petition to put it on the ballot, and the city council can choose to act within the next 3 weeks. They can basically enact the ordinance that's going to require them to implement the mobility plan as they have supposed to have been doing for the last decade, to actually force them to do that. They can choose to do that themselves in the next 3 weeks, or it can go on the ballot in the fall and the voters can push it. But a lot of folks worked really hard to get that on the ballot and to twist the city's arm. So that is a sustainability issue. How it's not just transportation, how folks, you hear the background now, how folks use our roads, whether or not, how cars behave on our urban streets, and how that impacts our ability to breathe and have a healthy environment is part of what our remit is here. So it's good news for us.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Thank you. Okay, so if there are no other comments, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Thank you. Motion by Diana, second by Chip. All in favor?
Aye.
Yay.
Yay.
Aye.
Good work, everybody. Good bringing your brilliance. And oh, wait, Jesse, did you want to say something? Oh, he just agrees. Okay, adjourn. Okay. Talk to you, see you
Good night,
soon.
all.
Good night. Good night.
Night.
Thank you for everything.